Get me in the screen, see me? Okay, I want you to say action.
Action.
Wow, what a surprise. I gotta take the S85 out yet again. All right, so we have both of these brake boosters. This is the one I ultimately wanted to use, but can't fit it in its location. So, and as a result, we need to go to a slightly smaller booster, but I think that it should brake just as effectively, if not maybe a little bit less, a little bit more force in order to brake. But that's not really too much of a concern for me. I need to get this master cylinder to install onto this booster here. So the bolt pattern here is, I think, 4 inches. Here it's like 3 3/8. So as you can see here on this side, there's a lot of flat surfaces on the inside here and on the inside here. So the plan is to remove this, drill new holes, and easily be able to fit that in. The thing that I'm a bit concerned about though is the depth of engagement inside of the booster here. So I need to make sure that even if I do get the holes right, that it actually pushes up against this and that there's no air gap there for it to knock and hit. It needs to fit up nice and flush. So let's take this off and put it right on here. So the 7-inch booster is now installed mechanically. It's mounted to the firewall. There's 3 bolts, 1, 2 on the other side, and then 1 underneath is 3, which is actually more than most BMWs actually offer only 2 bolts that mount to the firewall. So we have 3 here. We don't have the 4th one up here because the height is actually higher than the lip, so we're not gonna be able to install that. Now, in terms of the master cylinder, we actually have a brake master cylinder from 135i, which matches the 4 calipers that we have, so we're gonna have a good stock pedal feel. This is a 7-inch booster, which is smaller than the double diaphragm 8-inch booster from the 135i, so brake pedal will feel a little bit different, but I don't think it's gonna be measurable. Here we have a modified master cylinder that's gonna be basically sitting right in there. So we had to create spacers that basically set this right exactly where it needed to be so that the output of the brake booster was the exact same depth as the input to the master cylinder. So that when the second you press the brake pedal, you see instant feel to the brakes. And that's exactly how I decided to design this. We're gonna end up modifying the reservoir. The reservoir was a 135i reservoir, but it was mounted at such an angle. Let me show you really quick. So the 135i booster, as you can see, has that little angle down below, which prevents you from installing it level. So it actually is gonna install something like that. And that's not what I want for this application. So an E60 M5 reservoir will end up being straight at the bottom and having a nice flat look at the top. Now these guys are the modified double-threaded spacers that thread onto there. And I don't have them installed right now because I have to have them turned. I already welded the nuts to each side with an M10 by 1.5 thread so that you screw them onto one side here. Let me actually just show you with the time. So overall, this is intended to be a creative solution for using a slimline booster in this application to clear the driver's side cylinder head. What we have here are 2 threaded M10 by 1.5 spacers that thread onto the booster. The master cylinder then butts up against the back side of the spacers where there's another thread where you can put your bolts right through and torque everything down. It is solid when everything is installed, but right now it's loose. What I need to do is turn both of these sides of the spacers on a lathe. And the reason I need to do that is to make sure that this is butted up perfectly level against the booster, because without that, it actually is at an angle and the booster is not sitting square. So that's not good. I need to turn these on a lathe and square them up to the exact same distance. Use the spacers here to space them out and make sure that the threaded part of the spacer is not what's holding this down. It's actually the torque created by the threads is what actually holds this in place. And that is the important thing here, is that the thread's not the one that's holding it in. It's actually the torque created by the pressing force of this to the booster through the washers. That's what's really holding this in place. And then these two lines are going to end up routing down to the DSC module, which is going to mount in the same location as the old ABS module. So before we go into that though, let's talk a little bit about how the pedal will end up fitting on this assembly here. So you can see the output or the input to the booster is right here, and there seems to be enough clearance between the input of the booster and where the brake pedal is going to be. The brake pedal will end up sitting right up in here somewhere. So you can kind of see that there. At risk of actually having to install the brake pedal again, I want to kind of go through what this is going to be on the bench. Now this is a 3/8 24 thread. Luckily for me, I already have that T handle on the brake pedal here, and it connects directly to the existing hole on the brake pedal. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to weld onto the pedal in order to get additional bracing so that this thing is not in a single shear mode. It'll actually be in double shear, and I'll explain that in a second. All right, so we have our brake pedal right here, right? And it rotates about this point. So when you press the pedal, it pushes like this, and this guy's like this. So it's basically pushing like this, and you're pushing with a high degree of leverage in order to push that booster and push the brake fluid through into the calipers and all that. So what we have here, most applications for BMWs, in fact, you can see right here, most applications for BMWs has the pin, the T part of the input to the booster, basically in a double shear mode, which looks something like this, where it's basically saddled over the brake pedal. In our case, since we moved everything over to the outside of the car, the actual input looks more like it's to the side, which puts this in a bit of a single shear mode. Single shear means that you have one point of shear between the two interfaces. And that isn't good, because that means that the bolt can actually move if you're putting leverage on it. So what we need to do, and BMW has done this in the past, which is basically weld a piece of metal right here, and it goes right in between where this will end up mounting. I'll show you that in a time lapse, but that's going to end up getting this into a double shear mode, which means you can press the brake pedal as hard as you want, and you're not going to make any deformation to the metal or the T handle. Now all I have to do is paint it, and I am in good shape. I now have a double shear brake pedal. Now that the brake pedal is reinstalled, you can see that the brake pedal switch holder, which is right here. So you can see underneath here that the pedal is installed. I haven't really hooked up the joint yet, but you can see that the brake pedal switch location had to be bent out of the way in order to make this assembly fit. So we have to relocate that brake pedal switch so that we can tell people when we are braking. So with a little bit of effort, I was able to make a brake pedal switch bracket right here and a button that properly aligns with the brake pedal pusher right here, so that when you push the pedal, the pedal is actually normally closed, and when you push the pedal down, it opens the switch and it turns the brake lights on and obviously sends information to cruise control and other things like that, that I would like to readapt for the DSC system on the E90. But anyway, so let's install these guys. I'll show you how this installs and show you how it works, and then we'll have a working brake pedal switch. So the whole assembly is basically mocked up. Nothing is tightened or anything like that. But you can see that when the clutch is fully out, it lines up pretty nicely with the brake pedal. That's how I adjusted when the brake pedal is at rest. When you press the pedal, it opens the switch and the booster moves, just like that. And obviously the brake pedal is going to be spring loaded, so it'll pull back as well on its own. And then this guy just connects just like that. And I could check that with a continuity meter, you know, easily. It's not that hard. But the button on the pedal presses the switch. And everything is pretty stout. And it's adjustable, you know, you can kind of bend the bracket if you need to make fine-tune adjustments. But these pedals are basically done, brakes are basically done, and now we can move on to the next thing. And by on to the next, I mean the next video. Unfortunately, we have run out of time today. Stand by into the next video when we talk about outer and inner tie rods. Putting the engine in yet again. Final welding this front subframe, finally. Perfecting the brake booster stuff. And of course, more headliner stuff.
Action.
All right, guys, that's about it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in today on this E31 S85 swap. We are reinvigorating this thing, and we're gonna be doing some cool stuff in January, February, and March until we get to a first start. If we're lucky, maybe even a first drive. My daughter is holding the camera, and she's doing pretty good, so I'm gonna give her an A-. No, man, I'll give her an A. I'll give her an A. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. My name is Frank Macaluso from Garageaholic, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Take it easy. Later.